I saw a lady go away. She said, "Why you going?" She said, "I'm gonna come sometime." And then Esther's gonna come sometime. Y'all say Lancaster, Lancaster, or Lancaster. Lancaster. I heard it. I do too. It's out there going for and it's so
Yeah, something. I knew it was somewhere.
they live there, but she said, "I'm gonna come." I said, "It's good. The song service is beautiful." Good morning. How are you, John? Good morning.
All right, we have the clock fixed, and it just turned to 9 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started this morning. So last week we finished up our series on discipleship, and so this morning we're going to just have a little one-week topic here, continuing what we did back at the start of the year. Ken led a class on great hymns. So this morning we're going to talk about another great hymn. Now, he talked about trust and obey. What other great hymns come to your mind when you think of great hymns?
How great thou art.
How great thou art. Others? Don, what's your favorite hymn?
Good. Good morning.
Good morning.
How great thou art.
How great thou art. Well, we've got two for how great thou art. Just as I am.
Does Jesus care?
Does Jesus care? That's a good one. Sweet hour of prayer. You don't hear that very much anymore. That's a great hymn. That's a great hymn.
The rugged old cross.
The rugged old cross.
Are you going to lead us in all these?
No, I am not. And you'll thank me for that. I was surprised there was one, we'll talk about it a little later, that I didn't hear. But this morning, we're going to talk about how great thou art.
Who won the contest?
Yeah. You can see me afterwards for your...
If I sang it, it wouldn't be anybody's favorite.
Yeah. So this song is song number 1A. You won't find it in your... If you've been around a long time, when I grew up, the songbook, Songs of the Church, How Great Thou Art, was 1A, right inside the front cover. I always wondered why they did that, but that's where it was. In our books, it's number 76, if you want to look it up. I am not going to lead at the start. If we have time at the end, I might try to lead it, but we'll see. So have you ever really just felt connected spiritually, or just felt like you really just felt the presence of God? What kind of moments were those? What kind of feelings did you have at those times? Gratitude? Shame? Guilt? Well, this song really speaks to the feeling of awe. Just absolute washing over of how awesome God is and all the things He's done for us. And, we sing a lot of praise songs. It seems like in recent history, we sing a lot more praise songs than we sing other types of songs. And Michael loves them all. All of them are his favorite, right? I don't think Michael's met a song he wasn't his favorite, and love the songs. But a lot of the modern songs, to me, now I'm speaking personally, this is not reflecting anybody else's opinion, but personally, a lot of those songs don't even speak to me at the level as this song. How great thou art. it really, to me, it's kind of a thinking man's praise song, right? Because it actually lays out why God is so great. And it does it in such a succinct and such a touching manner that it just really speaks to me. So this is the reason I'm doing it is because this is one of my favorite all-time songs. And it sounds like it is for you guys too. And it's a praise song that's, somebody coined a term, a 7-Eleven song. It's a lot of our modern music, they call it a 7-Eleven song, which is 7 words sung 11 times. And that's not this song. This song really spends the time on the meaning and the great awe that we have. So let's just read it rather than sing it to start off, because as we'll talk about later, this was originally written as a poem. O Lord my God, when I in awesome wonder consider all the worlds thy hands have made, I see the stars, I hear the rolling thunder, thy power throughout the universe displayed. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. When through the woods and forest glades I wander and hear the birds sing sweetly in the trees, when I look down from the fully mountain grandeur, the lofty mountain grandeur, and hear the brook and feel the gentle breeze, and when I think that God, his Son not sparing, sent him to die, I scarce can take it in, that on the cross, my burden gladly bearing, he bled and died to take away my sin. When Christ shall come with shout of acclamation and take me home, what joy shall fill my heart. Then I shall bow in humble adoration and there proclaim, my God, how great thou art. I'm going to go ahead and let's see if I can find it real quick. There was actually 2 additional verses to this song that we don't see in our modern hymnal. Oh, when I see ungrateful man defiling this bounteous earth, God's gifts so good and great, in foolish pride God's holy name reviling, and yet in grace his wrath and judgment wait. When burdens press and seem beyond endurance, bowed down with grief, to him I lift my face, and then in love he brings me sweet assurance, my child, for thee sufficient is my grace. I don't know why those verses weren't kind of adopted in the canon, so to speak, of the hymnals, but I just thought that was interesting that we don't see those very often. Now, I'll make sure I don't lose my place here. Okay, so I said this poem was originally a poem. It was written by a Swedish poet, statesman. He was actually a member of the Swedish parliament at one point. He was a preacher. He published several letters and missionary documents, magazines, things like that. His name was Carl Gustaf Boberg, and he wrote this in 1885. And he basically wrote it as a poem after he had experienced a very moving natural event. And so I'll just relay his account of this. It was that time of year when everything seemed to be in the richest coloring. The birds were singing in trees and everywhere. It was very warm. A thunderstorm appeared on the horizon, and soon there was thunder and lightning. We had to hurry to shelter. But the storm was soon over, and the clear sky appeared. When I came home, I opened my window toward the sea. There evidently had been a funeral, and the bells were playing the tune of "When Eternity's Clock Calls My Saved Soul to the Sabbath's Rest." That evening I wrote the song, O Storgud. So he published this as a poem in a little newsletter that he put out. And then later, somebody else, unbeknownst to him, took it and used it as lyrics with a old Swedish folk tune as the melody. He then was in a different province on one of his trips at a church, and they were singing this song. And he recognized the lyrics as his own and loved it, loved that they had done this. And so he then took it and republished it in his paper as a song. So the version we have, we're going to run off the page here, was translated and adapted by Stuart K. Hine, in the 1940s, and we'll talk a little bit about how we got that. But he took Boberg's first two verses and he added two more to it. So the last two verses were actually added in the English version. And the song has evolved from the original poem to now in the English considerably. But if you put them side by side, you can see similar themes, but the words are considerably different if you just use a straight English translation off of it. So, because Kevin says we have to use maps, and he didn't say we have to. Kevin pointed out the love of maps. So we have to have a map. So how did this song get to the United States and to us? Let me make sure I got my notes here, because this gets a little complicated. So, like I said, it was written in English. In Swedish. It made its way from there into Germany. And so the Germans translated it into a version, and it translated into, "You are a large God." So I'm glad that's the lyrics that didn't survive, because that sounds kind of funny to us. But from there, it went into Poland and was translated into Russian. And so the Polish version was a Russian version that then became popular there and made its way into the Ukraine. So this is where Stuart Hine heard it for the first time on one of his missionary trips. So he was a missionary for the Plymouth Brethren out of England. So he was a British missionary. He was touring the country, and he heard that song there and just adored the song. So he took it and translated it into English. And he translated the first two verses, added a third verse at that time while he was in Ukraine. And this was right at the beginning of the Second World War. He had to return home because of the war breaking out. And in England, he added the fourth verse and then published it in some missionary materials that went out through Europe and made its way to India. Okay, in India, one of the missionaries from the United States, who was a British missionary, Edward Orr, he was there in 1954. So this isn't that long ago. This song's not really been around all that long. And he heard a choir in Northeast India singing this song, loved it. Now, Orr was what we'd call a college missionary. He went around to colleges all over the United States and spoke to them. So he came back to the United States and brought this song with him, and then would use it as part of his college missionary seminars and stuff. Well, at that point, another figure enters the picture here, a guy named Tim Spencer. Does anybody remember Tim Spencer? It's kind of obscure, but he was one of Roy Rogers' original collaborators. He was a cowboy singer. And he's the one that he became converted to Christianity, and he actually started Manna Music, if you've ever heard of the company that provides a lot of gospel materials, Manna Music. He had two kids in college at the time, and they went to one of Orr's seminars, heard this song, loved it, came back to Dad, the music guy, and said, you got to do something with this song. He loved this song, so he actually bought the rights for it from Hine and brought it to the U.S. to be published here as part of his Man of Music empire. Okay, one more stop. Billy Graham. So Billy Graham, everybody remembers in the 50s, well, not everybody's going to remember that. Some people might remember. I remember as a kid watching reruns of some of the Billy Graham crusades. Well, the Billy Graham crusades happening in the 50s were big-time events, big, huge arena type stuff. Well, his lead song leader, guy's name was George Beverly Shea. He picked up this song, made a big production out of it, brought in a huge singing choir, sang it in one of these in 1957, sang it in one of the Billy Graham crusades. It just burned through the churches at that point. Everybody wanted this song, everybody loved it. Everybody started including it in their hymnals. It went across a wide variety of the Christian world. One just little note that I ran across I thought was interesting. The Methodists wanted to include it in their hymnals, and they went to get the rights and to negotiate the rights. It was such a huge expense that they couldn't afford it. So they basically reused one of the original Swedish versions for several years until they finally got this included in their hymnal in the current form. So, Elvis Presley, remember him? Just thought it was noteworthy that his first Grammy, his very first major award, Grammy, was received for singing this song. This was his production of this song, won the Grammy back in 1967. He actually won 2 Grammys with it because in the 70s he redid it on one of his spiritual albums that he released, and won a second Grammy for that album, which featured primarily this song. So no surprise today when I ask what your great favorite hymns were. So in the UK, this always comes out as number 1 among the public. In the United States, it regularly polls as the number 2 song. Any guess on what the number 1 is? Amazing Grace, yeah, no surprise there. All right, so enough of the history. Let's get into the song itself. Excuse me. O Lord my God, when I in awesome wonder consider all the worlds thy hands have made. So this photo is a composite image of some sensing that was done with the Hubble telescope and the new James Webb telescope. New being it's been up there a couple of years now. It's showing 2 galaxies. So these aren't just stars. I mean, these are galaxies that are lined up so that they look like they're running into each other. Job says, dominion and awe belong to God. He establishes order in the heights of heaven. I think if you were a psalmist back in the day and you were looking up at the numerous stars and you were pondering the greatness of God, that was one thing. But for us today, when we can see so much more than they can see, that we have access to images of God's creation that they didn't have, it just floors me how much more in awe we should be than those. How much more nature should speak to us than our ancestors. It's just unbelievable. So when I hear the words awesome wonder, I just think Wow. And this isn't just awesome. You know, everybody says awesome. This is awesome. This is awesome. It's overwhelming just how great our God is. If you look at his creation, we should have deep, deep reverence and awe when we look at it. The power that created this is something that is just beyond our understanding. In Psalms 33:8, the psalmist basically says, fear the Lord because he's awesome. Stand in awe of him. I mean, and this is a reverent fear. This isn't a, be scared. But although if you ever cross him, you better fear this kind of power. But it's just unbelievable, the beauty and the enormity of his creation. Psalms 33:8, let all the earth fear the Lord. Let all the people of the world revere him, for he spoke, and it came to be. He commanded it, and it stood firm. Thoughts? You can jump in anytime. Sometimes I'll ask rhetorical questions, but sometimes they're really... Everybody understand what a rhetorical question is? I guess you do. I see the stars, I hear the rolling thunder, thy power throughout the universe displayed. Genesis 1 relays, how creation came to be. And it basically, everybody knows the story that God basically expressed it into being just through his word. And the natural universe that we live in, I don't know, sometimes I look at it and say, yeah, you could see the power, you can see the organization, you can see the watchmaker at work designing and creating and stuff, but you also see the artistry. We don't often talk about God in terms of being an artist, but if you look at his creation, there's a lot of stuff that you go, yeah, maybe that has a purpose, but wow, God just created something beautiful, just absolutely breathtaking. But behind that is, again, so much power. So our star, the sun, just our sun, has a total energy output of, I won't do it in scientific notation because it'll go right over it, but it's 3,860 trillion watts of energy. Okay, that's just our sun. We live in a solar system that's part of a Milky Way galaxy that is another, millions of these suns. Our sun's not even one of the bigger suns. It's not even one of the brighter suns. So when you think of that kind of power and that somebody, our God, spoke that into existence, how can we not praise him? His power is displayed throughout the universe. So Psalms 19:1 says, the heavens declare the glory of God, the skies proclaim the work of his hand. When through the woods and forest glades I wander and hear the birds sing sweetly in the trees. I have to check my charts here for some reason, running off the page. So we talked about, God created so much beauty, and we see that beauty mainly in the natural world around us, right? I mean, it's nice to go into museums and see works of art that have been created by men and women with great talent. But I don't think any of that could compare to the beauty that we'll see by going on a walk through a forest glade or looking up in the trees and seeing the beauty and the workmanship involved in a simple bird. Has anybody ever pondered us as part of that natural world and what sets us apart? Okay, that one wasn't rhetorical.
Sometimes I just look at a little insect and think, wow.
Yeah. And I think we're able to do that because we have one thing that sets us apart. We were made in the image of God. And I think that's more than just, our physical attributes, because I'm sure that's probably not true. But our ability to look at creation and appreciate it seems to be something that I'm certainly no expert on the animal kingdom, but I think that sets us apart, that we really can see the beauty and have awe of the things that God's created around us, and that we are part of that. And it lets us enjoy nature. It gives us the ability to enjoy what God's created. And to me, that's why I think a lot of people feel so much closer to God when you're in a natural setting. Is that true for you? It is for me. Is it true does everybody kind of agree with that? You feel more connected with God in a state park than you do in the aisle at Dillard's? Or sitting in front of your TV at home or whatever. I think that's in general true. I think Psalms 139:14 says, I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. So it expresses our ability to appreciate what God's done. And I think that is part of his plan in creation with us as a unique position to enjoy that. And so Psalms 104 on the chart, how many are your works, Lord? In wisdom you made them all. All the earth is full of your creatures. The other thing that amazes me is how much God created, right? He didn't just create a tree. He didn't just create a bird. He didn't just create a mammal. There are about 1.9, and this is just what we've categorized, right? And what we've observed as a species. 1.9 million species of life on Earth. Almost 2 million unique creatures. Is that overachieving? I mean, it's almost like, yeah, okay. I'd be impressed if you could do it just 5 times. 1.9 million different species. If that doesn't make you wonder, then I'm not sure I know what would.
Makes me wonder who counted them.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure, I don't know, that poor Frank back in accounting that's having to catalog all that. I don't want his job, but no. I'm assuming, Don, that's over over a period of time.
I wonder how long it took Adam to name the creatures.
Yeah, exactly. Well, he must have been, we don't have a kind of a span of that time. But I think you bring up a point there that I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, we talked about being connected to nature, but what was Adam and Eve? Where were they placed? they were placed in a garden with all this natural beauty around them, and they really weren't given much to do there except appreciate and commune, right? Boy, wouldn't it be nice to go back to that, huh? And I think that's where we're headed. At least, that's one version of it. All right. Oh, did I skip? Oops. Nope. All right. When I look down from lofty mountain grandeur and hear the brook and feel the gentle breeze, the only thing I can say right here is, then sings my soul. I love going to the mountains. There's just something about seeing something so massive, so grand, and yet so detailed that just makes your soul sing. You ever been on one of those, think back, I have to think back. Been on a camp out or a youth event or something, and you know it's night time and you're up in the mountains and you're just sitting around and you're looking up at the stars and you're seeing the kind of the silhouette of the mountains in the background, and you just want to break out in song. You ever been there? Okay, maybe I'm the only one. That one wasn't rhetorical either.
Well, I think there is something to that because all through the Old Testament, it's the high places where people erected idols to worship.
Yeah. Yeah. For those who couldn't hear, Jack said that, in the Old Testament, the people would use the high places to erect their places of worship. So there's kind of a historical, biblical, precedent that shows that we're kind of maybe wired that way.
And, one difference between us and the rest of the creatures God made is we're the only ones that have free choice.
Mm-hmm.
Now, both Isaiah and Jeremiah, God, in Isaiah, he says, the ox knows its owner and the donkey its master's crib, but Israel does not know. My people do not understand.
Yeah.
We get to choose. We call it instinct for animals, but they know what they're supposed to do.
Yeah. Yep.
And he has a comparable message in Jeremiah 8 about that. So we get to choose. They just do what they're supposed to do.
Yep. So for those who couldn't hear, Jack, he basically said what another thing that sets us apart from the animal kingdom is the fact that we have choice, that we get to choose, that we're not solely operating on instinct. Okay, so the next two verses are the ones that were added by Hine to the original poem. And it kind of switches gears to God's direct intervention in our lives through his Son. And when I think that God, his Son, not sparing, sent him to die, I scarce can take it in. Have you ever been overwhelmed thinking about what God did? I'm sure you have. A lot of times, the times for me that maybe it's happened a lot is during the Lord's Supper, where you're intentionally thinking about God's interaction with mankind through his Son and what his Son did. And I think the way it's expressed here is I scarce can take it in. It's true. I mean, it just becomes so emotionally overwhelming that you just kind of have to let it wash over you. Romans says, he did not spare his own Son, but gave him up for us all. How will he not also, along with him, graciously give us all things? That on the cross, My burden gladly bearing, he bled and died to take away my sin. So apparently this plan was in place from the beginning, right? This is not something that just was a spur of the divine moment, right? It was something that was planned. And so the fact that Jesus came and did this for us, that he basically removed himself as part of this awe-inspiring, powerful, all-knowing, all-seeing God to come and actually bleed and die. Again, all I can say is, then sings my soul. I mean, that's got to, if you've got a heart of stone, if that doesn't touch you. At least, I don't know, go see a cardiologist. Maybe Don, if you, I don't know if I want to diagnose you with the heart of stone, but he himself bore our sins in his body on the tree so that he might die to sins and live for righteousness, that we might die to sins and live for righteousness. By his wounds you have been healed. Then sings my soul. When Christ shall come with shout of acclamation and take me home, what joy will fill my heart. You know, Matthew recounts the parable there, and Jesus is relaying, and in Matthew 25, and it says, his Lord said unto him, well done, good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. I will make thee ruler over many things. Enter thou into the joy of the Lord. I mean, we're going to one day either see Jesus coming or we're going to meet him in the air, right? I don't think about that enough. I really don't. I really don't think about that moment and the gravity of it. I guess I could say I would hope it would be in my lifetime, because boy, what a sight that would be. Whatever that's going to be physically here for us to see, or for those who will be here. I don't know, I can't get a good picture of what that's going to look like, but I guarantee it's going to be awesome. And there's going to be lots of acclamation happening at that point, lots of shouting, and the joy for those that he's collecting for himself is going to be incredible. Our joy is going to be incredible.
That's kind of what I've got pictured in my mind, is kind of like a loud clap of thunder, lightning, and then all of a sudden the sun kind of comes out above the clouds, and he's coming back.
Yeah.
That's just what I have pictured in my head.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And again, I don't know what it's going to look like, because, we know that daylight here is nighttime on the other side of the earth, right? So how, what are they going to... I don't know, and at that point, I'm pretty sure I'm not going to care, right? Other than it's just going to be awesome.
On the last day, the physical laws don't make any difference anymore.
That's a very good point, Jack. All the physical laws are out the door at that point. And again, we're not going to care that they're not there. Kiss them goodbye. You can have gravity and keep it forever. I don't care. Then I shall bow in humble adoration, and there proclaim, my God, how great thou art. You know, I think there's a picture painted in Revelation of heaven and God in the midst of, in the account there, it's the 24 elders representing whatever it represents, but it's a scene of praise to God that we're going to get to participate in. And it basically, everyone bowing down in pure adoration for our Creator, for our God, that not only made us just with His spoken word, but a God who had a plan to reconcile us from the sin that we had, and a God who opened the doors of His heaven and brought us in. How could we not bow down and adore that if you really take it in, if you really think about that? So out of Revelation there, you are worthy, our Lord and God, to receive glory and honor and power, for you created all things, and by your will they were created and have their being. So anybody got a thought about how this song impacts them?
I was just thinking, that verse says, when I look down from the mountains, Ranger. I used to go on wilderness trek in Colorado with the youth group when I went to church.
Yeah.
And you're standing on top of a 14,000 foot peak, and you look up, and you see this eagle flying about 500 feet above you. Just amazing.
Yep. Yeah, it is. All right, we have 4 minutes. Shoot. That means I got to try to lead this thing, right, Don? Unless you want to. Unless you want to. No? Okay.
No,
Well, we don't have any. Do we have a song leader that wants to try to lead this to spare you of me?
I'll do it.
You want to do it? All right. Appreciate that. It's number 76 in the hymnal, or you could probably do it from memory. And I'm going to turn off my mic because this is not going to work.
Oh Lord my God, when I in awesome wonder consider all the worlds thy hands have made, I see the stars, I see the rolling thunder, thy power throughout the universe displayed. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. When through the woods and forests glade
scarce can make it in. That on the cross, my burden gladly bearing, he bled and died to take away my sin. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. When Christ shall come